I'm DiStefano, CEO and co-founder of UrbanFootprint. I'm going to give you a quick tour of UrbanFootprint and highlight a few ways it's being used by governments and enterprises to address critical challenges in urban transformation and policy, community resilience, hazard and climate risk, and COVID response. I want to start by talking a little bit about what it means for a community to be resilient. One definition is the ability of a community to withstand social, economic, health, and natural disaster and climate shocks. A resilient community should be able to experience one of these shocks without putting fundamental human needs at risk. Core needs such as food and housing and energy and mobility and the access to opportunity. It turns out it's actually rather difficult for us as a society to determine the most effective ways to improve the resilience of these systems in real communities on the ground. This has become even more apparent now that COVID is shining an all too bright light on the interlocking social, economic, and health crises that are threatening to destabilize whole communities today. To address this challenge requires a deep data-driven understanding of communities and the impacts of interventions within them. We built UrbanFootprint as an urban intelligence platform that seeks to dramatically streamline this understanding and deliver targeted insight into the hands of public and private sector urban planners and engineers, federal and state and local agencies, and enterprises across the energy, mobility, healthcare, finance, and academic sectors. We help some of the largest institutions in the world assess risk, understand markets, and make better decisions. We've spent years building a comprehensive nationwide platform that allows anyone to assess conditions for any US location. The platform distills a complex fabric of land use, infrastructure, environmental, natural hazard, and socioeconomic factors into actionable insights at national, state, city, and neighborhood scales. The platform is being actively deployed by agencies and communities struggling to address the health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. It's informing relief deployment and policy development by state and local actors in Louisiana and California. Data insights help agencies and relief providers understand the scope, scale, and distribution of health and economic risk across communities. The platform is used to evaluate statewide indicators of economic stress and target local relief where it's needed most. A dynamic eviction risk index maps the scale and distribution of rental risk across states, counties, and communities in the United States. UrbanFootprint's urban and community data cores are combined with unemployment and economic activity data to provide a critical view of the scale of rental risk at all levels, and critically, how risk is distributed across the landscape. This can be used to assess and compare the resource and other needs across states or counties, and even within counties. This map highlights where rental risk intersects with the most economically vulnerable communities in Louisiana, those where households are very unlikely to have a safety net or savings to stave off eviction and homelessness. Our foreclosure index leverages federal, state, and commercial data sets to map the scale and distribution of mortgage default risk across all US markets. Like with the eviction risk index, risk is mapped and enumerated and consistently updated to inform policy and intervention. Now, targeted insights built from urban, environmental, and community data cores are also being deployed to support energy utilities and agencies challenged with prioritizing asset hardening and other investments to address climate and community risks, which are becoming increasingly apparent. Let's hone in on heat waves, which have quickly emerged as a top threat across the Western US. We start by making critical heat wave data and projections accessible to more actors across a utility. A heat wave index then breaks down key risk factors and serves as a normalized screen that can be used to compare heat wave risk across an area or a service territory. A community vulnerability index, which incorporates detailed urban, sociodemographic, and health conditions data, allows for a consistent scan and ranking of the relative vulnerability of communities to heat wave events. Bringing these two indices together into a composite heat wave vulnerability index allows us to hone in on places where the highest climate risks and community vulnerability intersect. And then finally, detailed grid asset data can be mapped, ranked, and prioritized for hardening or investment based on the heat wave vulnerability index. Now, these are just a couple examples of how UrbanFootprint helps organizations cut through the noise to plan better, invest better, adapt better, and build a more resilient future.